Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Kaba Ilco. This is their part number 7075 UE 10 26D KA2. It's a rim cylinder is what it is, and we're going to dissect that part number after we take a look at what's happening here. Okay, it's a very interesting bitting on that cut, on that key. That's what you call a declining step key, where the bittings get increasingly deeper as you go towards the tip of the key. That is always, frankly, something to be discarded or avoided. You don't want to create declining step keys ever. And the reason you don't want to create use a declining step key in your master keying system or just your keying system is that when the points of the key wear down and wear away, which they will, you would be able to pull that key out in the locked position. Okay, I've had a client of mine for many years ago, met for a great amount of time. His master, which I inherited through his, taking over his work, was a declining step key, so thoroughly worn, would pull out in any position. He actually liked it to work that way, very interestingly enough. And I'm only talking about declining step keys because this is a declining step key. It will not come out because those tips are the points on the key, but if I were to go and file those down, I would be able to pull that key out, there's no doubt. So I'm a little surprised that the factory created a declining step key. And I would have to say, a bitting that would have like 11223, if we're going from bow to tip. Okay, so here it is. Here's the direct code. It's 11224. So, okay. Yeah, as the numbers get increasingly larger, it's called the declining step key, to be avoided. So this client who's getting this, needs to be recommended to them that it be repinned into something else. Now the factory, when they're creating these bittings for these cylinders, they're probably just using, with the exception of maximum adjacent cut specification, MACS, they're probably pinning all of that material, pinning the cylinders regardless of declining step keys and other, rules of keying where you don't want a very deep cut at the bow because it'll make for a weaker key. You want moderate variation. I like to have a deeper cut in the second to last or second, depending on if it's tip to bow or bow to tip, and then a shorter pin leading it so that it is a little bit more difficult, I suppose, to pick that key because you've got a real long pin and guarding in front of a shorter pin. Just a couple of, not to get too far off the track. So this is a 7075. That means it's a rim cylinder. Okay, this is used in installations where you're installing this hardware down to something that's rim mounted. Rim mounted is hardware that would be like a surface mounted deadbolt, a surface mounted latch, a slam latch, a exit device trim. Hardware that is mounted on the rim of the door or the perimeter of the door, like the aforementioned. You'll use rim cylinders in lots of applications as well. Exit device trim, rim mounted. Bypass for cylinders, for alarms. All kinds of things can really use rim cylinders, and this is an example of it. So the 7075 is not only a rim cylinder, but it is a rim cylinder that supersedes the prior 7015, meaning the 7075 has a threaded-on cap at the back rather than a C-clip. So they've migrated to a threaded cap option on the back. Okay, and that's what the 7075 is. Now the UE, that stands for a Lorry 80 Keyway. Kaba Ilco does not use Lorry 80 in their terminology at all, because I understand that they're by agreement not to do so. And it's UE is what we're looking for a Lorry 80. This is a 5-pin, and it's important to know that your Lorry 80 is 5-pin. If you have a Lorry Keyway, and it's a 6-pin. It's not a Lori 80. I think it's a Lori 90, actually. So that's what the UE stands for. Now, the 10 in the back, that is a reference to the tailpiece configuration. It will have this long, flat bar style tailpiece. Okay. The 26D, well, that's easy. That's satin chrome. That peel-away protective film there is going to reveal a satin chrome plated brass scalp plate. That is a very thin piece of brass over the face of the cylinder. It's literally called a scalp plate. It's very thin, covers the face or the head or the top. Okay, and then after that we have KA2. That means that when the manufacturer ships this, for every 2 of them that are taped together, they're going to have the same bitting. So if you say, well, I need 2 cylinders, I'd like them key to like. Okay, order it KA2. If you need 3 cylinders all key to like, order one of them KA2, order 2 of them KA2 and one of them KD. You'll already have 2 key to like and only need to rekey the 3rd cylinder, and so on. If you want them all key different, KD. If you want them all, if you got 10 of them, KA10. They can do that as well. So let's go around with the visual tour here as well. You're going to get, because it's a rim cylinder, you will get a cylinder collar, or a cylinder ring, really. Very common to see that on the outside of a rim-mounted deadbolt, like a Seagull or a Kaba Ilco. I should say that first. I think a Seagull first when it comes to rim deadbolts, mounted hardware. But if you go back 100 years, 120 years, 150 years, there is going to be every manufacturer made rim-mounted bolts. And in fact, rim bolts were extremely common. It was either a rim bolt or a mortise body. Rim bolts would naturally have been far less expensive, and far less expensive to prep the door as well, because you're just installing that door, that lock, right onto the inside face of the door. You'd have a keyhole that would go through the door naturally, and if you looked at a Yale catalog from 1880, they would have their section called the Standard, and the Standard were bit, or not barrel, but bit keys. And you might, if you are not familiar with locksmithing at all, you might know the term skeleton key. Well, think of a skeleton key. That's the type of key that was used in those standard locks. Well, many of those locks were rim-mounted and would literally feature a cylinder from one side of the door like this. And that's, well, actually, it wouldn't feature a cylinder on the outside like this because what you would have is, let me back up, what you would have would be keyholes that would go through the door for 1 or 2 keyways, generally 1. You could have a knob trim coming through, so that key really just locked and unlocked the deadbolt, okay, but the knob would always be active. You could have 2 keyholes where you would have 1 key that would just retract the latch. You would have another key that would operate the deadbolt. Okay, you would have stop works in the edge where you can lock and unlock, although that would be a mortise lock. There are no stop works, I think, in rim-mounted hardware. No, none that I can think of. Anyway, getting pretty far off the track, but you'll see cylinders like this installed in those types of locks that are surface-mounted. Seagull was a primary name that many of us know that grew up in a large city like Chicago, and most certainly New York. You'll find Seagull locks everywhere. This will also include a mounting plate. When you drill through the door, this is the plate that will be on the inside, and your lock will set over this, and then a couple of screws to go through the door. You'll notice that the tail piece has graduation points, as well as the screws have break-off areas here. You'll have to trim those carefully, cut them straight so that they are not too long for your application. Expect to have to cut that tail piece. Do so straight. Don't just put your plier on there and start bending. You'll break something, because you need that tailpiece to rotate completely accurately along its axis. The tailpiece cannot go in an oval. It won't work well on the lock. Then you're going to have this funny tailpiece. That's what we call, and believe it or not, it's called lazy action. This would be used in a situation where you need to throw something and then bring the key back to vertical and pull the key out. Whereas with a fixed tailpiece like this, every time I rotate the key, I turn the cylinder. Well, if you have a deadbolt, think of a deadbolt in your mind's eye. when you throw the deadbolt, you want to be able to pull the key back and out without bringing the latch bolt back. That's what a lazy action does. It allows you to do that. Let's switch to the. There is one more part. This little C washer will go with the lazy action tailpiece, and it will sit, kind of like that. Okay. Let's switch now to the screen view and take a closer look at all the supporting documentation. Okay, so this is the item that we are looking at, except that this is not the actual item because this is its predecessor, the 7015, and we don't have a 7075 in the site yet. But nevertheless, it will certainly serve our purpose. We do just have to fix something up here. You see that we have the wrong manufacturer associated. So let's correct that. Kaba Access is a sister company to Kaba Ilco, along with many other companies. Okay. Now, this will show you what the Lori 80 Keyway looks like. And again, their designator for that is just UE. I don't know if there's any correlation to Lori 80 and UE, but that's what they call it. This will work on doors 1 3/8 to 2 1/4 without any trouble. Probably even thicker than that. I would say it's possible much thicker. There is a table below that shows the tail pieces that we have, and we do indeed have the 862B, which is a long rigid tail piece at 2 3/8. So this is going to work on a door. Well, it's possible it'll work on a 3-inch thick door just because of the length of the tailpiece. But nonetheless, you're going to bump into, you're probably not going to bump into many 3-inch thick doors, although they are very much out there. So now how we can dissect this part number is let's go to the manufacturer's page here, and then let's open up the document called Brass Cylinder Manual. Now, let's type in 7075, and we're going to get to the page where that part number is shown. Right here. 5-pin cylinder with screw cap. The 7076 would be the same thing, but a 6-pin. It would be drilled and pinned to 6. This would be drilled 6 and pinned 5 on the 7075. So if you have a system where you have 6-pin blanks, be sure to order the 7076. And that does feature the screw-on cap that I demonstrated earlier. Now the next part in the part number is that UE, right here, that Lori 80. And be mindful, you should not order a 7075 UD because that's a 6-pin. So a UD, a Lori 90, would be only 7076, and UEs would be 7075. Okay, same keyway, I understand, just different length, 5 or 6-pin. Now you can see from this table that Kaba Access has a couple of dozen keyways here for you to review. Ones that are, obviously very common are going to be your SC for Schlage C. That one probably the most common, at least it's the most common that I deal with. KS for Quickset, very common. CB for a Corbin 67, that's not unusual. Sold one of those on Friday. WE for Weiser, a 999 from Yale, or a GA keyway from Yale, which I think is their Para. You can do Schlage E, Schlage F. You can do a C through K, which is their SX, which is a composite keyway, meaning this has been broached. The plug has been broached to receive all keyways C through K, which is really C through G. Don't order that unless you need to have an all-section broaching on your plug. That's going to have very large tolerances inside of it where your key will not fit the way it ought to. Sergeant LA, sold one of those last week. Okay, you get the picture here. Sergeant LA, LB, and LC, you can order it as a GB, not uncommon, sold one of those 2 weeks ago. Now, also in this catalog, we can continue to dissect the part number. We've done the cylinder type, we've done the keyway. Now the 10, we did already touch on that, and that's that super long tailpiece, which is 2 3/8 in length, and it does include that lazy action as well. At least I've always found that those lazy action keyways have been oh, pardon me, those lazy action tail pieces have been included, which is this area. Over here, satin chrome, and then KA2. Let's go to the next page and look at both of those. Lots of finishes can be done. 2060 satin chrome, obviously 03 for polished brass, 46 for Duracolor brown aluminum. If you're ordering cylinders, they're probably 2060 or they're probably Duracolor brown aluminum, but there are other options as well, just to be mindful of that. Then any keying that you require, KA2, key to like in pairs or key to like in fours, however you like it. O-bitted means that there would be basically no cuts, or if there are cuts, there would be 0 cuts, which would be the shallowest cut. So you might want that because you want to cut the keys after you combinate the cylinders. The factory can do all of this key work, master keying, grandmaster keying, construction master keying, even though I don't know how the factory goes about construction master keying, whether it's lost ball or lost disc, you know, how they're, or if it's a split key. I don't know how they're construction master keying, but obviously some way they're construction master keying. Speaking of key work, we can do all of that internally as well. We can do any sort of keying requirements, keying systems that you require, level 1, level 2, 3, etc. We have a working knowledge of how to build master key systems internally. Very handy document to be able to dissect that part number. If it comes to mortise cylinders, which will be over in this column here, where we were initially here, you'll have different cams in place of your tailpiece. Lots of different cams. Suffice it to say, Kaba Ilco does practically everything as it pertains to mortise and rim cylinders. They also have, which is based on their mortise cylinder platform, a series of very low profile deadbolts, their 45 series. I am very partial to this series of deadbolt for 2 reasons. Number 1, you can build them off the shelf for doors that are exceedingly thick. You're only limited by the length of the cylinder. I've ordered cylinders that are 6 inches in length. I've done cylinders that are for, 3 3/4 inch thick doors. This modular system allows you to thread these cylinders in, and the rest is just a typical deadbolt. That's number 1. Number 2, I like it because you're probably familiar with 2 3/8 back set, 2 3/4 back set, maybe 5 inch, maybe 3 3/4, maybe 12 inch if you grew up in a home that was built in the early 1960s. But Kaba Ilco has a 2 inch for their deadbolt, and that's really nice because if, the last time that it really came into play, having the need for a 2 inch back set latch bolt. This is awful. Sorry. This is supposed to be a pair of doors. Client had, these are 2.0 doors. 5 light each. Or, pardon me, 10 light each. Okay? 4 inch style from here to here. 4 inch. Nothing's going to fit on that. 2 3/8's not going to fit. It was just too big. But you throw that 2 inch right in there, centers itself on that style without compensating for an astragal or a stop, and it looks beautiful. It's just really great that they have a 2 inch back set. Many other options I won't get into, singing the praises of the 45 series deadbolt here, as I've done it in other places. Also on that manufacturer's page, items of note would be all of the Kaba Ilco products that we sell, which can be reviewed by this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website. That brass cylinder manual does serve as their catalog, but they have their key blank catalog here. It's 500 pages practically of everything key blank related from Kaba Ilco. So if you are on the hunt for a key blank, I would encourage that you get into section 2. If it's a typical door lock, section 2, and then it's alphabetical. Okay. So if we're looking for, let's look for Lori. We're looking for Lori right here. Okay, Lori. Got a couple of Lori blanks here. Interestingly, neither of them are the blank that we're dealing with, but nonetheless, here they are. You know what, actually, speaking of key blanks, let's go back. There's one more thing that I wanted to show you. The brass cylinder manual. Back to that document. If I were to search for UE for our Keyway, I'm going to get a lot of UEs because it's UE. The word blue shows up, but in that brass cylinder manual, we're going to come to a chart that tells you what key blanks are included with these cylinders. So if you need key blanks for this UE Keyway, you would order a Lori Centric is their part number. And I think literally we're going to search for Lori Centric in the site. Oops. Lori Centric. It's right here. So if you need more of these key blanks, you're going to order this Lori Centric. So that document is very handy because it will show you, you know, you might say to yourself, yeah, I need the cylinder, but I need 8 more key blanks. Well, this table, which is on page 20 of this catalog, which is, I'm using this in the year 2020, will get you those part numbers. So really handy. So it'd actually be an 80 Lori Centric, then of course a 90 Lori Centric. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, in conclusion, I'm quite partial to Lori, well, Kaba Ilco. I'm quite partial to Kaba Ilco, and it's because of the very high-quality cylinders that they make for an absolutely, you know, fair price. You can't go around buying high-quality brass rim cylinders for these types of prices from OEMs, and I will search. I don't look for ways to necessarily take business away from the Schlags, the Yales, the Sargents, the Corbin Russwins, etc. But there are times when you just need a cylinder and you need it now. And yeah, I've got, you know, I've got a Sargent LA Keyway. Okay, you know, as the saying goes, Chicago wasn't built on a 6-week lead time. We got to go now. So Kaba Ilco is a great option because this inventory is so deep, but because it's a really tremendous confluence of value, price, availability, quality. Also backed by tremendous technical support, a gentleman there at Kaba Ilco who not only answers my questions, but tolerates them in the first place. And to him, I say thank you very much. So I would use Kaba Ilco every time that I can. I don't when I don't have the keyway that I need, obviously, etc. But because it's made of solid brass, it works very smoothly as well. The plug, the housing, the shell, whatever you know you're going to call what it's going into, because those tolerances are so nice on an architectural base material like brass, you'll have years, if not decades, of faithful service out of a Kaba Ilco cylinder. Any questions on the 7075 UE10 and a 26D finish, or any other Kaba Ilco product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.